This is Jack Fishman behind the camera talking with Jeff Garza. Jeff, you're the principal horn of the San Antonio Symphony, but on Saturday, the 19th of this week, you're stepping out of the orchestra into the front as a concerto soloist in the Strauss Horn Concerto No. 1. Tell us a little bit about the Strauss.
Well, probably the most interesting thing about it is that he wrote it when he was 18 years old. He finished it when he was 19, but he started it when he was 18, and his father was probably the most renowned horn player in Europe when he was growing up. He premiered many of Wagner's operas. A lot of the great Wagner operas, the horn parts in these Wagner operas were inspired by Franz Strauss, even though Franz apparently hated Wagner as a person and a composer, and he was a very conservative, traditional guy. So his son Richard writes this horn concerto, which is very inspired by Wagner. It was kind of like a slap in the face in a way to Franz, and he refused to play it. He said it was unplayable. He thought it was too difficult, but I think probably it was more that he just rejected the style, because Franz was very much an admirer of Schubert and Mendelssohn, and there is some of that in the Strauss First Horn Concerto, but you can definitely hear that Wagner-esque, romanticism that Franz Strauss was not a big fan of.
Now, most concertos are either piano or violin. So how common are horn players as soloists, and where does this piece stack up in the great horn concertos?
Well, this piece is definitely the most widely performed horn concerto, along with the Mozarts. There are 4 Mozart concertos, and they get performed pretty equally. The Strauss First Horn Concerto, though, gets performed quite frequently. But yeah, horn concerto is still a pretty rare thing. I've been a soloist here a couple of times, and I've been a soloist in a couple other places, but I haven't done a whole lot of solo work, and it's becoming more and more acceptable as horn players get more technically proficient, and they trust us more to go out there and play and not embarrass ourselves. But I was thinking today, between Mozart and this Strauss First Horn Concerto, there isn't a lot of solo horn repertoire. There was kind of a golden age of the valveless horn around the time of Mozart, and when the valved horn came into being, it gave composers a lot more possibilities for orchestral writing, but it was a little bit unreliable as a solo instrument. So there was this big gap between around the time of Mozart to the first Strauss Horn Concerto, where there's virtually no horn concertos.
And when does the valve become in common usage?
It was invented around 1850, but there was a big gap where composers either loved it or hated it. Schumann, for example, liked the valve horn, and he wrote a lot of his great symphonies with the valve horn in mind, whereas Brahms completely rejected the valve horn. All of his symphonies are written for the valveless horn. And also the Brahms Trio, which I'm actually performing also this week, is written for the valveless horn. And Brahms, obviously a very conservative composer also, and he just loved the sound of that instrument, and never really cared much for the valve horn. But the Strauss First Concerto is definitely written with all of the possibilities of the valveless horn, or the valved horn. Lots of great virtuosic technical stuff, and along with the great lyricism and the heroic.
Now, the Brahms Horn Trio you're doing with Camerata San Antonio, and so you're doing that Thursday, Friday night, and Sunday afternoon,
right.
And you're doing the Strauss Saturday night.
And last night I played another chamber concert with a completely different program. So this is one of the craziest weeks of my career, probably. I can't remember a time where I had to do 5 concerts, 3 programs. I also did a master class on Monday, so it's just been an insane week, but I'd rather be too busy than not busy enough. So.
Yeah. Now, the other thing about French horns is you get lots of famous solos, and the melody in Tchaikovsky's Fifth, and everybody knows the great horn solos in the orchestra, but they're relatively short. I mean, the horn player will get the tune for 20 bars or something, and then the oboe gets it, and then the violins take over. But when you have to do something like the Brahms Horn Trio and a concerto, there's probably a whole lot more playing, even in a normal concert length. Is this an endurance challenge?
Well, luckily, I've played both of these pieces quite a bit. I've never played the Strauss with an orchestra, but I played it quite a few times with a pianist, and I've done the Brahms Trio about 20 times. So I have a good idea about how to pace myself, and I feel pretty good about it. And even though the solos in the orchestral repertoire, they're, like you say, they're usually pretty short, and then you have a lot of time where you're not in such a prominent role, but you're still playing a lot. So in some ways, orchestral playing is a little bit even more demanding, especially at the extreme volumes we sometimes have to play. You know, we're doing Mahler or Tchaikovsky or something like that. That's pretty taxing. Whereas you're playing concerto or chamber music, you can actually just play with a nice, relaxed sound and just kind of blend in with what's around you. You don't have to fight so much to be heard.
So, in the last week of April, first week of May, when we're doing 6 Tchaikovsky symphonies in 9 days, is that crazier than this week or less crazy?
Well, I would say it's probably a little less crazy because we're still just doing 2 concerts on the weekend. I know there's a lot of music to play, but it's still a pretty typical week. And I do a couple of summer festivals where I'm used to doing multiple programs in the same week, so that's not quite as disconcerting as having to play all this prominent solo and chamber stuff. But the lucky thing is, if people go to the symphony, they usually notice that there's somebody sitting to the left of me in a pretty heavy horn program. My assistant, who plays all the long, boring stuff, the long notes, the whole notes and the long sustained notes that aren't really that important. I get to kind of cool my jets until the big solo comes. So that's a nice thing on a heavy program.
Yeah. So we have Thursday night in Kerrville, Friday night in Burney, Saturday at St. Philip's College with the Strauss Horn Concerto, and then the Brahms Trio back Sunday afternoon here in San Antonio at Travis United.
Right.
We're looking forward to it. Sounds like a great week. Good luck.
Thank you.
Keep your lips rested. Thank you.